This is a video on the liberal arts of business, engineering, and design. And I'll start with 1 point for each of them, probably, maybe two. The liberal arts of engineering. What is that? That's history, literature, art, comedy, drama, uh, performing for emotions in people's hearts, which is everything that the people who choose to become engineers are afraid of and bad at. It's the cost of choosing to be an engineer, and to make engineers real people and not just toys for MBAs to manipulate. They have to become full people. And instead of doing this after the age of 40, if we can get them to do this by the age of 30, the quality of their designs dramatically improves. Liberal arts of business. This is two things. Number one, discovering what business ideas are socially and politically and culturally, to undo the right attitude, rightness religion of the field of economics, which is delusional. Um, and to remove economics as a hiding place for psychopathic people choosing to be in MBA programs because they're tired of feeling unimportant, i.e. the average CEO who's shorter than the average businessman and got beaten up on the playground at 8 years old and wants revenge with billions of dollars. The liberal arts of quality. It turns out that total quality, the most successful movement in all of business history worldwide, the movement that laid the conceptual foundations that allowed the internet to grow by showing us how horizontal processes could be supported with computation instead of vertical monkey territories. That quality is an anti-culture. It was anti-Japanese management culture inserted by Japanese in Japan to fix flaws in traditional management culture. And similarly, it will be an anti-American culture, although what the Americans foolishly did instead was two things. They copied the anti-Japan culture as if America's business culture was the same as Japan, and of course got much less effects because they weren't improving their own culture of business. And then number two, the Six Sigma people of all those consultants who lost out to quality gurus in the 1980s organized themselves for a revenge attack called Six Sigma, where they shut down the intellectual and practice innovations in quality and replaced it with usual old American biases and attitudes. Six Sigma is the graveyard of quality progress. Then we have the liberal arts of design, creation, and invention. And this has to do with two things. It has to do with the courage of being outside of your organization and society and culture and gender. And it has to do with the courage of moving to their center and putting on shows that wow them. A very strange combination of opposite kinds of ability. The liberal arts of innovation have to do with innovation itself as an anti-culture. And in this case, it's anti-organization, anti-bigness, anti-centrality. The liberal arts of management and leadership have to do with the primary deliverable of leadership regimes, which is directedness, and measuring how much directedness current leaders and leadership regimes deliver, and finding out that it's less than 3% of what's needed, and then tinkering with inventions of new leadership regimes that would actually deliver directedness to large workforces. The liberal arts of interfaces and intellectual tools has to do with the fact that schools all over the world, even the best schools like Weston School, which sends the most students to Stanford, MIT, and Harvard every year, are absolutely ancient and out of date in the interfaces and media they use. Using 1,000-year-old interfaces and intellectual tools for meetings, discussions, brainstorms, processes, classes, and reading and writing, all of which have become ridiculously out of date, and there are wonderful alternatives available, none of which any good school system in the world uses. And so what would happen if you put 12 years of education founded on great interfaces instead of ancient, not great interfaces? The liberal arts of communicating and influence. This has to do with eliminating the male monkey myth of the great heroic Napoleon leading the ignorant generals around him into the right way. And that whole hormone religion of why males should be on top and how wonderful to praise them when they are on top, and replacing it with what actually gets messages into people so that they actually are influenced by messages. And when you actually measure that, you find that none of this male panoply of power and intimidation does that. And so you've had fake communication and fake influence for years, with large revenge effects under both of them. And we've been fooled by that. The liberal arts of culture has to do with the fact that high performance, culture, and selves are exactly the same phenomena. Exactly the same phenomena. They are large accumulations of practice routines that have been practiced until they are unconscious and effortless, and we're not aware that we learn them. And we certainly don't know what alternative routines we could have done instead of them. The liberal arts of systems thinking is the fact that though Singh in his book, The Fifth Discipline, lists 11 systems specs, there are actually, when you talk to product development managers in many companies, 256 that they mention, not 11, 256. And if you look at video games typically involve less than 5 of them. And so you have these 251 non-linear consequences of actions in present situations that are missing from every video game in the world. That's what makes real games in real life difficult and fascinating, and sometimes wonderfully good, and sometimes wonderfully tragic. And so you could take any video game in the world and just look at my map of 256, figure out the right ones to add, the next version, next version, next version. Now there's this issue. If you have too many of them at the same time, too intensely, it overwhelms players and they give up and they don't like the game. If you have too few of them, then players don't grow and don't feel like their minds are expanding and they give up the game. There's this flow ecstasy point where people, as Csikszentmihalyi's research identified it 30 years ago, there's this flow point where they are asked to operate slightly beyond their best current capabilities, and they feel they're being stretched, but not so far that they're overwhelmed. And we can tinker with these 250 system effects, what combinations, how many of them at a time in game situations, actors, and characters, to get ecstatic flow points more and more in games. That's what gets you this legion of 1 million word-of-mouth users suddenly burgeoning. The liberal arts of career, the books on career research, there are about 150 of them out there, are the most vapid, empty literature you could ever imagine. It's sort of human resource type females who don't want line management responsibility, and marginals who don't want to have to compete or be humiliated in public presentations. And so you have really second-rate hitters, third-rate hitters, and then, of course, there are a couple of good people in there, but not many, because the atmosphere is really not enthrallingly intellectually challenging or rich. And so there's very little interesting research on careers, and almost all of it is on like department chiefs in giant corporations, as if everyone in the world was a department chief in a giant corporation. That's because the people doing career research lust after money, and you get that from big corporations. But if you actually look at careers that are all the careers that are out there, and interview people who are successful in the humongously stressful, different environments that are out there, you find really interesting stuff going on. The liberal arts of self-development and self-management. One reason we have so little directedness delivered by leadership regimes is that leaders are unable to direct themselves as entities. And when you go to acting school, whether it's Lee Strasberg or some other theory of acting, you are the instrument, and your life is the instrument, and your accumulated experiences, remembered experiences, are the instrument, and you learn to use them for the purposes of the moment in the relations in the drama that's on the stage. And this idea of using all that you have become and being aware of all that you become, that's not easy. And then you ask people to change that. That is really not easy. And so one reason we have so little directedness delivered by leaders is that they don't manage themselves at all. We sense the manias, the male hormones, the I want to be on top and I'm better than you, I have more houses and boats than you. We sense the little boy on the playground who didn't get enough importance and wants to take it out on 50-year-olds and 60-year-olds using money. We sense that kind of childish, wimpy, exaggerated self-importance drive at the guys at the top. And we lose respect for them. They can't manage their own emotions, and how can we expect them to do much of managing of the organization except to sort of psychopathically rip it off for money? Liberal arts of risk, chance, and ventures. This whole thing of a riskless life is dead, and an over-risked life is dead too. It's an inverted U function. You need enough risk to make you wake up, but not so much risk you get overwhelmed. It's the real life version of the video game ecstasy point, and it has to do with how many nonlinear system effects of the 256 I've mapped you expose yourself to at a time and what particular combinations of them. The liberal arts of social relationships. This is the social neuroscience discovery that there are many, many modules in our brain that apparently are all for handling social phenomena. And the size of our brain apparently is optimized for groups of 120 to 150. And anything larger than that, we can't relate to humanly or morally. We don't sense them as people.